Miami Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill addressed the media yesterday regarding the incident with the Miami-Dade Police Department before the season opening game against Jacksonville. Hill making it clear that he wanted the officer who pulled him out of his car and threw him to the ground fired immediately. However, Tyreek did acknowledge he could have handled the situation differently.
I will say I could have been better. I could have let down my window, in that instant. But the thing about me is, man, I don't want attention. I don't want to be like cameras out, phones on you, in that moment. But at the end of the day, I'm human. I gotta follow rules. I gotta, do what everyone else would do. So now, does that give them the right to literally beat the dog out of me? Absolutely not. He got to go, man. Because in that instant right there, like, not only did he treat me bad, you know what I'm saying, he also treated my teammates with, disrespect. He had some crazy words towards them, and they ain't even do nothing. Like, what did they do to you? They just walking on the sidewalk.
Kimberley and Martin joining us. Obviously, Jason McCourty still here, Stephen A. I'll start with you. S.A., your reaction to Tyreek's comments yesterday?
Well, it was nice to hear him admit what he admitted. I give him props for that. I would have preferred that he'd done that initially because so many of us jumped out and supported him when we saw the initial video. And we haven't deviated from that because the officers were excessive and it was uncalled for a traffic stop to elevate to that point. But I like to remind everybody of the specifics because sometimes we tend to gloss over that. Let's take this into consideration. We know what kind of world we're living in. We know how unfair it is. We know how black people, especially black men, are stigmatized when it comes to dealing with police. We all understand that. So knowing that, and knowing that whether it's his uncle or his grandpa or whomever, told him, like so many of us have been told, Jason, Kimberley,
yep.
Roll down your windows, put your hand on the steering wheel, okay, and don't mouth off at the police officer. You know, the police officer who's a law enforcement official, who has a gun, who has a taser, who has a bulletproof vest, and is at complete advantage over you at that particular moment in time. Do everything that you can not to exacerbate the situation. When Tyreek Hill was pulled over, he left his windows up. The officer had to knock on the window. And he rolled it down a little bit and said, don't knock on my window like that. Don't knock on my window like that. Don't knock on my window like that. What did the officer say? Well, if you had your window down, I wouldn't have had to knock on the window. If you had it down. And everything took off from there. And so for me, no, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that that officer had a right to drag him out of the car that way. But he said it. He could have handled things better. And the reason why that's important is because times that we're living in, it's not an exaggeration to say this. Tyreek Hill could have got himself killed. When you have that window up, they don't know what's on the other side of that window. You don't know how they would have reacted. So thank God everybody's safe and not additional harm came to the situation. But I'm very, very happy he acknowledged that he could have handled the situation better because he should have handled the situation better for his own sake, as well as those out there who look up to him and might want to emulate his actions.
I do think it was very mature of Tyreek Hill to give those comments yesterday. I think things can always seem clearer with the benefit of hindsight. However, my issue lies with the fact that so many people, unlike Tyreek Hill, didn't have the benefit of hindsight. What should I have done differently? Ooh, if I had not done this, because they're not here to tell their story. The issue here is excessive use of force. I understand that, we can talk about the window, we can talk about all these things, but ultimately the reason the body cam video and what we saw on Twitter Sunday morning, why it affected so many of us that way is because of because of how physical they were with him, how when he seemed to be compliant, how he was still treated. And so I think when I hear especially older generations talk about, how to protect yourself, because these are the times we're living in, what that advice, while I understand it, it doesn't get to the root of the issue. It's we have to now brace ourselves for the world that is unfair. We have to change our behavior as opposed to talking about what the issue is. The world shouldn't be like that. Police officers, and again, I have tons of police officers in my family, friends, all that. But they are trained for these situations in a way that civilians are not. We don't know what it's like to be, it's panic. That is what we feel, right? In those moments. And as a Black woman, that video is triggering for me to watch, especially when I sit down next to other Black men and watch it. Because you can talk about how Tyreek should have done this had he not done that. Philando Castile, we have so many names of people who don't have the benefit of being able to say, in that moment, I wish I had done something different, because their lives were taken. And so I get what Stephen's saying, but it's still, even for me as a woman, when older generations tell you, oh, don't dress a certain way because you don't want somebody to take advantage of you on the street. You don't, and that advice, while I understand it, it's not about what I'm wearing. It's about how about we figure out why is somebody trying to take advantage of me. That's the issue, not necessarily the dress, not necessarily the window, in my opinion.
The same thing of how to conduct yourself when you are pulled over on the side of the road and rolling the window down and hand on the steering wheel and all of those things. Yesterday, when Tyreek Hill made his comments, I'm sitting in my office and I'm watching NFL Live, and they're playing the comments. And my 8-year-old son will often come in there if I'm getting ready for a game or I'm watching something on my iPad film-wise because he loves football. And they're playing the video. And now my 8-year-old son is asking me, why are they treating Tyreek Hill like that? Well, why is he apologizing? Well, what did he do wrong? Well, Daddy, how are you supposed to do that when you are pulled over? And I'm caught in an instance where I'm trying to explain that to him. And to your point, Kimberly, I want to tell him when you get pulled over, the main objective is to make sure you drive off from that spot and you make it back home. So I want to tell him, roll all your windows down, put your hands on the steering wheel, make sure your license and registration is where they can see it so nobody feels like they're in a dangerous spot. But also at the same point, I don't want to tell him these things, and now he's driving in fear, and he's thinking about the actions of someone else where maybe his actions don't even provoke him to do the things that they do. So I appreciated what Tyreek Hill said, because I do think, to Stephen A's point, there is a way to conduct yourself that we're all taught at a young age, but the behavior has to be corrected. There's no way we should continue to talk about these things. There's no way once he's dragged out of the car, he should be forced to sit down on the sidewalk the way he did. There's no way when Calais Campbell and Jonnu Smith come up, they should be treated the way they are. These officers are trained to how to conduct themselves in high-pressure situations. Tyreek Hill is trained when he goes out there on the football field to score touchdowns. He may not act in the way that he should in that moment. And to your point, Stephen A., you wish he would have said it sooner. But for him, it had to be all a blur after the game where all of these things transpired and your only thought is, hell, I didn't do anything wrong, and now I'm in handcuffs. So I just respected the fact that he came out and said that, because so many little kids are watching Tyreek Hill and listening to every single word he's saying.
What happened? He was able to get through the situation. I'm saying to you, we can't ignore the fact that what we're asking for is unlikely not going to happen in a lot of situations. Most, yes, it will. Some, yes, it will. But in a lot more cases than not, what we believe should exist does not. And at the end of the day, I would rather us sit in front of the camera, in front of a microphone, on a podium, post-game, post-practice conference, or everything else, rather than somebody else speaking for us because we're in a coffin 6 feet under, because we put ourselves, because an officer that is not inclined to do what he was trained to do, we knew it all along, and we still going to antagonize him anyway. Hell no. Hell no. Say what it is. They are wrong to do what they did. They were excessive, but in the same breath, Tyreek can't do. Most people can't do what Tyreek did and get away with it. You're going to antagonize them, and as a result, they're going to band together, and they're going to do something to you. That's the reality.
Stephen A., everything you said, especially the incidents that happened to you personally and your friends, that's sort of my point. I understand the world I'm a black woman in America. I understand life is unfair and life is difficult, and there are different challenges that affect me in a way that they don't affect you and Jason and Molly. Like, those are realities. That doesn't make it right, though. And I think when you talk about Tyreek Hill, I wish he had said, you know, I should have acted differently sooner. Him saying that yesterday, I think it was mature. That doesn't change my stance on supporting what he is saying about how he was treated with the excessive force. That is my only argument here. What he said yesterday does not change how I watched that video and how angry I was, not just for me as a black person in America, but also the black men that I know, that I love, that are in my family, that are my friends, because that is a real fear. That is a real fear for all of us. But I understand you have to tailor our behavior, but again, that doesn't fix what is at the heart of the issue.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's not going to get fixed. I'm saying you can't, just like you can't legislate what's in people's heart, in the same breath, understand that what you're saying, we all want it. I know they were excessive. I know Tyreek Hill is right to say what he said. I know that it was completely unnecessary. I know that Calais Campbell and Janu Smith didn't have any business being treated that way. We get that. But what we're also saying is, oh, it's going to happen again. Oh, it's going to happen again.
But
it's not going to stop.
But what you're saying, I'm sorry, Jason, Stephen, what you're saying is, if we just comply, if we just do the right thing, if we just put ourselves, if we act just the right way, it will ensure that we go home. No, it won't.
Yeah.
No, it won't. And that.
Who the hell said that? I didn't say it ensures anything.
I get your point, though. You're saying if you don't do those things, and if you don't even look at it, because listen, an officer walks up to the car, and I understand, to Stephen A.'s point, to what a lot of people are saying, an officer has no idea what's on the other side of that window. And Tyreek Hill rolls his window up, and it's a limousine tent, and the officer can't see what's inside. He has no idea. So now he's fearful of his own safety. So I do think that is a valid point. But Stephen A., as you continue to go through the instances where you were put in that position, was your window up? Did you do anything to antagonize a police officer? I think there's instances where, to your point, yes, it may not change, but we also have to point.
You're saying they're not instigated, and it still
happens. So we still have to say, hey, we have to conduct ourselves a certain way, but point the finger and say, hey, but you know what? This is wrong. This cannot continue.
But what I'm saying to Kimberley is this: we did do that. We spent a couple of days doing that. Matter of fact, we were on the air with Dominique. And Dominique was saying this conversation should be private. And that's the only way we parted ways. He thought it should be private. Yeah. And I said, hell no. And then Molly jumped in because you got lives that you're trying to save.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand it. I'm like, yo, that's the priority.
Both things are true.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Both things are true.
Absolutely. We have to leave it there. By the way, the officer that he wants fired, Danny Torres, was placed on administrative duties. So we'll keep you up to speed on what happens there.
As well he should have been.